for you today. Deceptive trade practices. Epidemic. It's not a question of whether or not it's happening in your dealership. It's really a question of how much is going on in your dealership. No matter how squeaky clean you think you are, I promise you, you probably are not. The safeguards regulations go into effect June 9th. You are not ready for it. We have criminals in this business. They get prosecuted in one dealership, one state. They move to another state. All of a sudden, they're back in business. What are you thinking? We've had criminals stand on the big stage at NADA, for heaven's sake. I mean, people that, and the definition of a criminal, not necessarily convicted. Anybody does a crime is a criminal in my book. And the panel today, the dog pounders, we lost April Simmons to illness. So she'll be back very soon. April speaking at NADA. Don't miss her session. Um, and one of the most brilliant women in the car business has a lot on her plate. Uh, Jennifer Briggs couldn't be with us this week, but she'll be back next week as well. But what we did get was Jason Harris, strategy with Jason. Hey, big guy,
What is going on?
are you ready for this topic?
I am excited for this topic. It
Mhm.
seems like it's very, very much so overdue.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's talking about it, and I'm telling you, I have spent 48 years guarding my reputation.
Mhm.
There's no need to lie, cheat, sneak, deceive, misrepresent to sell cars. I set records and didn't have to do any of that. You know, it's absolutely amazing, what we tolerate in the car business, and we allow these people to stay in the car business. If we were Puritans in old New England, we would shun
Mhm.
these people. We would paint a scarlet letter on them and run them out of the tribe. Get rid of
It's
these
crazy.
criminals. And one of the queen of BDC. I'm talking about one of the most brilliant women in the car business. We got
Thank
several
you.
of them in the dog pound. One of the most brilliant women, or I want you to revise that, Bobbie. One of the most brilliant persons in the car business.
Thank you. I am proud of you.
Oh well, I'm sucking up there. Yeah. Bobbie Herron. Hi, kid.
Hi, you. I'm excited about this topic today. I'm a lot excited about this for the viewers that we have that aren't the dealer who find themselves in a dealership where illegal practices take place and become a part of a culture that initially maybe they didn't intend to and make it okay. And it's a small business, it's a small world. It takes one dealership in a small rural area when you think they don't know anybody for you to completely ruin your career. That's
Absolutely. In the last couple of days, I have researched more than 100 deceptive trade practice cases in the
yeah.
car business in the last 3 years, totaling over $3 billion in government fines, 20-year prison terms for dealer principals and employees.
Yep.
We're not we're not farting around here, folks. and
No.
and the curmudgeon of the car business, the mad Russian himself, unfiltered Max Zanan, the king of reinsurance. Hi, big guy.
I mean, that's a great introduction. I will put this on my business card.
Curmudgeon. Do you know how to spell curmudgeon? I don't.
Me neither.
Should be a license plate.
Max is having some
Fantastic.
cameras delays today, audience, but he's trying to join us.
Yeah.
The biggest one I've found so far was $10 million, and I don't think it was just. It was against the Napleton Group. It's pretty public. I don't think
Yeah.
that was a just judgment in any way, but we'll talk about that. But I found a lot of 800,000, $700,000, $7 million. $700,000.
$700 million? Jeez, so Pete.
That
Was
got
that
overturned.
Carvana? Who can
That
afford
got
that?
that got overturned by the Supreme Court, but it started out this was in Arizona, New Mexico. That was a dealership that allegedly falsified income. You know?
I think I remember that story.
Yeah. So, whether that really happened or not, I can't say. But they ended up paying $415,000. And let's talk about the different crimes that dealerships are accused of committing. Let's get into the specifics. Max is going for a second here, working.
Well, I'll tell you one that I just
Jump right in there.
It just happened to me yesterday. So I'm buying a new
Fresh.
travel trailer. I'm getting the financing set up. They present to me the protection packages and then go to tell me that if I take this one, they can get me a lower interest rate. That the lower
Definitely
Illegal.
against the truth in lending laws. Regulation Z prohibits tying product sales into the interest rate.
It happened, and I had to take a moment and kind of talk to the lady. We were doing this over video, and I just said, we just need to stop for a second. I think I need to inform you that how long I've been in the automotive industry, and I understand what you're doing right now is completely illegal. So should we have an open conversation about this? And she's like, had nothing. Came back to me. They stripped out every single fee on this deal. They gave me a bigger discount. They pretty much bought my silence because they know that I caught them with their pants down.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that hey, Max, shake your head. Look at you. You got it fixed.
He's back.
Okay. Max is back.
Bobbie saved the day.
I'm watching Peter Smith on the sidebar, and I'm really interested in some of the things he's got to say.
Yeah.
First of all, let me point something out to you. A lot of blame is being placed in the F&I office. But I'm going to tell you what, most of the crimes committed occurred in the sales department before F&I ever got the deal. And, they're finance crimes, but they were committed by a sales manager or a salesperson at the first level.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, the number one crime that dealerships are doing, and I guarantee you, if you got 20 people on your staff, somebody is doing this in your dealership, falsifying income. And when we talk about falsifying income or falsifying the equipment on a car, falsifying a credit application, number one crime in dealerships that's
100%.
occurring today. And dealerships paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in government regulations, the Federal Trade Commission, the CFPB, Consumer, what is that? Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. I mean, they're trying to operate under the Gramm-Leach-Briley Act, which I don't believe are even a legitimate agency. But
well, I was thinking about this topic, Jim, and I thought, maybe there may be a fair amount of people in our audience right now that actually don't know what we mean by deceptive trade practices. I'd be willing to bet there's some people at a sales level or even in a dealership right now that don't even know.
Absolutely.
I'll explain it.
So let's do that. Let's start.
Okay, a deceptive trade practice is a loosely defined in every state's language. The federal government is more specific on what a deceptive trade practice is if it's a federal suit. But it's loosely anything designed to confuse the customer, mislead the customer, is a deceptive trade practice. It gives them the ability to prosecute you for just about anything.
So a force.
It's very loosely defined from state to state.
Yeah, it goes as simple as well, simple isn't the right word, but it affects everybody as simple as saying that a vehicle is there when it's not there. Happens in a BDC all the time as instructed. Running an ad that says we can get anybody approved for credit with nothing down.
Okay, the Carvana Vroom got deceptive trade practices for advertising vehicles they couldn't produce.
If you're a finance manager who just, what happened to Jason just yesterday, that happens more commonly than anything. You got a 2% markup, a 1.5% markup. You swap it out for the product because you can't get that, but you don't want the reserve charge back.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, not only do you have a giant lawsuit on your hands for the dealership, but your name is inside of it. And believe that if you're the finance manager, you're responsible in court too. You end up in jail. You end up not getting another job. And
I don't want to be the bride of Big Bubba.
Right? You want to bump your PVR, 3% and $250 to get your pay plan knocked out. But like you say, it does start. It starts at the top, even if you don't know, because
Yes.
it starts with how we write pay plans, and it starts with how we invest in our culture and inspect what we expect. And when we don't do that, these are the kind of things that happen.
Aaron Hartshorn says the three prongs of noncompliance in the Federal Trade Commission's eyes with dealers are non-compliant advertising, junk fees, or charges of discrimination. And I'm going to be talking about those three things, but actually the three elements of deceptive trade practice is prejudicial. I'm trying to remember the word, charging too much. And the other one is
Gouging.
Yeah, there's three of them. It just escaped me just as quick as I started to say it. But you can't be prejudicial. You can't. We all know what prejudice is. Race, religion, all of the categories.
Yeah. We like to follow the philosophy at my house of DBAD. Don't be a dick. It keeps you out of a lot of trouble in life. And it's what I use with my dealers. It's pretty simple.
Very, very good. Well, look what we got here. Posting inaccurate pricing on the MSRP online on the dealers. Bait and switch. We're going to talk about bait and switch. When a customer comes in the dealership, post the accurate pricing online with markup and add-on, says Trey Susie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of dealers that Mitsubishi dealership in Brooklyn, New York, that had the $800,000 fine.
That's a perfect example.
They guaranteed financing, which you can't guarantee financing. Come on, what are you thinking about? They bait and switch customers, evidently, allegedly advertised cars they didn't have, which Bobbie just pointed out. And
even if you don't know
that
better.
was just last July. That was
a common one. A common one with that is like not even advertising one that you don't have. It's having one still pulled to your website from your feed and having it be there, and then teaching the sales team or the BDC to say, yeah, come on in, it's here, and not confirming that it is. It can be as simple as an accident, but what it looks like to the FTC is that you try to bait and switch for a more expensive car or something that had add-ons. And we know how this works. It's going to take one example, guys. It's going to take one example it's the same thing we've been dealing with texting for years.
Well,
we still don't have clarification. It'll take one example and a judge on one side of the country versus the other or wherever to decide if it's going to be your dealership.
Credit repair is an issue.
There is no such thing as a 6
You
month.
need to get out of the credit repair business altogether. But the thing about credit repair is when you tell a customer that if they finance a car with you at a higher rate, that they can come in and refinance and their credit will be repaired because they paid their bills on time. Yeah, and I know a lot of F&I managers and sales managers, if you pay your bills on time, your credit will be great when you come back. Max?
So listen, I want to give you a little bit of a longer version, right? It all starts with new car dealers.
Dealers or manufacturers,
right?
Max?
And the reason it all starts with new car dealers is because of the stair-step program.
There you go.
You cannot look at deceptive advertising unless you look at stair-step programs. They're directly connected. So if you're a new car dealer, let's say you are a Nissan dealer, right? Because this is the usual suspect, right? And
Nissan
dealers, you are the
just as
usual
bad.
suspects.
Right. So the pre-pandemic, they had all these stair-step programs that dealers had to hit in order to make trunk money. And of course, the quota gets higher and higher every month. So what is the dealer to do to hit the quota, right? Of course, at the end of the month, you have no choice but do some deceptive advertising to get a bunch of
We don't have
people
no
in your
choice.
showroom.
Let's clarify that.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Right.
There is a choice.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But when you have, let's say, $500,000 on the line of trunk money or $1 million on the line, that choice, it's easy to sit here and say, well, you got to have the moral compass, blah, blah, blah. When you sit in the dealership and you know that your fixed expenses are pushing $800,000 a month, that trunk money will come in handy, right? So a little deceptive advertising didn't
Yes, it
hurt anybody,
Well,
right? Right. So at the end of the day, you get these people to come to the showroom based on deceptive advertising. Based on deceptive advertising, you have no choice. It's not bait and switch where you're going to have to switch them from this car to that car. It's putting them in the same car, but charging them more than you advertise that car for. This is where the junk fees come
we'll
in.
talk about
right?
junk fees in a
Call them-
minute. That's another subject that's coming really quickly.
But I'm just saying, you can call them PDI fee, pre-delivery inspection fee, destination, whatever you want to call it, right? Now, at that point, you're barely breaking even if you're lucky, right? Because you advertise the car $3,000-$4,000 underwater. With all these fees, you're luckily back at invoice, right? And then you go into F&I. And this is what Jim is talking about, right? Because you deceptively advertise, you most likely attracted not the brightest customer out there, right? Because normal customers know that a car is worth X and it's not worth X minus 7,000, right? So now you put this customer in F&I, that customer does not make enough money. You get your credit app falsification. If it's a used car, you get your power booking. You do whatever it takes to get the deal approved at the advantageous term for the dealer, not the customer. And then there's cooperation between the tower and F&I, because without that cooperation, you cannot get payment packing and jamming F&I products, because payment packing happens on the front and jamming F&I products happens on the back, right? So it is a culture that infiltrates the entire
I agree.
dealership. It's not that finance managers are guilty or innocent or the desk managers. Everybody is on the same page, including the
But
dealer.
Max, let's talk about where that culture starts, and the culture adopts it
At the
from the
very top.
manufacturer. I remember at one point in time I was working
Correct.
on a project. It was a marketing project with a larger agency that was working with Hyundai. You guys remember the Accent L? And at one point in time, Hyundai was spending millions and millions and millions of dollars marketing a vehicle that only 77 existed in the entire country, because it was all, but it starts up there. I mean, that's a fundamental problem, and then when we build up programs to like what you're talking about, it's no wonder what ultimately ends up happening. But to Bobbie's point, we have a choice.
Yeah.
Just because our manufacturer is doing this, and just because other dealers are bending this or breaking that to get to those additional bonuses from the manufacturers, doesn't necessarily mean it still comes down to me as an individual. I have a choice to either do that or not.
Mm-hmm. The part that I find frustrating for finance managers, and I love Max has got the back of finance managers across the country for sure. The part that I find frustrating for a finance manager, for some of them, is that how many times does a dealership bring in somebody who has no qualifications, completely train them from the ground up and teach them, never send them to compliance school? We've talked about the legality of this before. And you would think like moral compass code, okay, if I do this, this is wrong. But if you've been taught that payment packing is a normal thing, and that this is just
let's talk about payment
how would
packing
you
in a
know?
second. Bobbie,
Yeah.
let me explain payment packing.
Yeah.
Okay, Christine Gregoire, who was the state attorney general of Washington in the late 90s, invented a term payment packing. She prosecuted 5 dealers and several credit insurance companies, service contract companies including Universal Underwriters, which changed their name promptly. And that's when the first time when she surmised that it was a violation of Regulation Z if you put a payment with products in it. You can't put any products other than the principal thing being financed, which is the car. You can't quote a customer a payment including a service contract unless you have already quoted one without a service contract and told them a base rate at a base payment at a base interest rate. Go ahead, Bobbie.
When we think about payment packing and we think about something, I'm using payment packing because it's such a common practice that can seem as if you're just giving a quote. You go places all the time as a consumer, even some of these finance managers as a consumer, and these kind of things are quoted to you that way, so it can feel very normal. But this is a big part of the problem here is you're going to see finance managers, and we already have inside of lawsuits that actually didn't know better. Actually, we're not trying to break a moral foundation or compass. Actually, we're taught that this is how we quote things because, quote unquote, we don't know credit yet, we don't know this yet. It can come across in a very dangerous way for these people who aren't properly trained. I think we're going to start to see some more requirements here soon for compliance laws and for people having to be licensed to do finance. And truthfully, I think it would be protective of the people doing it and helpful for them to have to, so that they can't be lied to by the people they work with for and in the culture that they're currently in.
Well, James Ganther, who is the most acclaimed compliance attorney in the known universe, says deceptive trades are the dumbest sales tactic out there.
Right. Putting it right, people.
Jim, I just sent you, Jim Ganther, I just sent you a
well said,
invitation to be on the show on LinkedIn, on your LinkedIn messages. Get on with us.
James is right.
Right, but listen, I have to agree with Bobbie.
Everybody heard that, right?
Right.
Wait a minute, you agree with Bobbie?
Unless we're licensed.
Never.
Are you running a temperature?
Even though my pronouns is not to agree with Bobbie, in this case,
there's
we
no
are on
pronouns
the same page.
after
You
my
have
name.
to license.
Right. Stay on point, boy.
You have to license finance managers, because how are they different from mortgage brokers?
Yeah.
How are they different from stockbrokers? How are they different from barbers? Right? Everybody has to be licensed. And if you violate
30
certain
more seconds on this
requirements,
subject, Max, because I know
no problem. But I'm saying, like, if you violate licensing requirements, would take away your license, and you cannot practice that profession anymore. This would be the best deterrent.
Well, it does exist, and it's funny Peter brought it up, and thanks, Peter. I was just about to say it as well. In Canada, we actually do have that in place. But I'll tell you right now,
we're international.
It still happens. I would love to say it deters it, but it doesn't. It still happens just as much as I see in the States versus in Canada.
But it's knowing versus doing. You have to eliminate the knowing before you can hold somebody accountable for the doing. And not to say you can't, but you should. It's knowing versus doing. At least then we know that somebody is choosing to violate a law, put our dealership in jeopardy, and put everybody in the dealership in jeopardy. You look at these dealerships that are in trouble right now.
Bobbie, let's get specific for a second. Power booking. Power booking, number one crime that dealerships do. It is inflating the customer's income, additional equipment on the vehicle that isn't really on the vehicle, supplying the bank with a fraudulent invoice, or supplying the some dealerships are actually supplying federally insured banks, FDIC, or a credit union, which is NCUA insured, which is the counterpart to FDIC, National Credit Union Administration insures credit unions. If you defraud an insured federal, then it's a federal crime, and they are obligated to legally. There's Jim Ganther. They're obligated to prosecute you. Understand this. If you power book a car and the bank catches you, they are obligated to prosecute you under federal law. They can't let you go anymore like they did years back. Now, that law has been on the books for 6 years now.
Mhm.
You can't, and I'm not an attorney, but we've got one of the best attorneys in the world just showed up on the
Yeah, thanks for
broadcast.
joining us.
Jim Gant.
Yeah,
Hello, Jim
where?
Where is
Gant.
that man?
Am I lying to these people, Jim?
Right?
I have no comment.
Right,
Mere puffery.
right.
What's that?
I said mere puffery.
Puffery.
Oh Lord. It took me a while to join in response to your invitation, Jim. The thing about advertising deceptive ads, back when I got a newspaper, which has been some years, I would get the Saturday paper thick with color ads from the local dealerships. I would pour my coffee and I would see how many fraudulent ads I could locate before my coffee got cold. And with a couple of very good exceptions, almost all the ads were fraudulent in some degree. The most common violation was the omission of dealer fee, which could be $800 to $1,500. If it's going to be added on in the end, it must be part of the advertised cost. And even having the fine print at the bottom of the newspaper does not save you. If I can do that for recreation, the local attorney general is likely to get the newspaper too. So you're advertising your violations. It is
But
like
now
shooting
that
fish
same
in a barrel.
advertising's online today. That same advertising is online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. We review
Isn't
those.
that funny? Like, people not watch true crime podcasts at all. I know it's a girl thing maybe, but like, what are you doing? It's like the stupidest thing you could do. Let's put it in writing where people can screenshot it and just make it all the way out there. Just ignorant.
I'm acting as an expert witness in a case right now. Dealer shall remain anonymous, but the enforcement action is based on online advertised prices.
Yeah.
And the dealer admits that, yes, these are teaser prices. In their defense, they do a better job of explaining what the total price is online than anyone else I've seen. But they're still violating the law.
Right.
And the reason they're violating the law, I hear all the time. Everyone is doing it. If I advertise the true price, no one will come to my store.
Well, Jim,
There's certain
there are
logic to
some
that.
dealerships that have a criminal culture, as opposed to dealerships that try to uphold the law. And there's so many laws. I mean, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I agree.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of people that are just ignorant, and that's part of what this broadcast is about.
Yeah.
But there are so many deceptive trade practices done on purpose, like
Oh yeah.
printing with power booking, where they print a false income statement from a false employer, and every employee in the dealership has it in their computer.
Yeah, templates everywhere.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny, Jim? You just made me think of something. My mom will love that I said this, but like, was I the only kid who grew up with the mom who was like, if all your friends jump off a bridge, are you going to do it too? Because that's what I think of every time somebody says like, but everybody's doing it. No, everybody's not doing it. There might be other people doing versions of it, but everybody's
Listen,
not.
I'm gonna give you. I want to give you a different perspective, right? Especially on power booking. I think the banks are in on it, right? Because the manufacturers sell detailed VIN data to the banks. So as your finance manager is power booking the car, the bank knows that they're power booking the car. But they still approve the deal anyway, and only if the customer goes and stops paying.
Not
right?
so, Max.
They-
Not so, because power booking includes adding equipment that you really didn't add.
Right.
It
Well,
includes income
Correct,
the
but
customer doesn't
detailed
make.
VIN data
with
shows.
the right AI program, it's
But
game
Jim,
on.
Now, that
detailed
dealership I was talking about in
detailed VIN
Oklahoma
data.
had all of that stuff. I mean, they were doing all of that.
Right, but the but Jim, detailed VIN data that the banks have shows the true packages of every vehicle in stock.
But true. But Max,
unless it's
maybe I've been
aftermarket.
involved in cases
Thank you,
with
Jim.
more sophisticated power bookers, because what you say is true, but was involved in a case that it was just off the chain. Every vehicle that rolled off this lot had on its bookout sheet Bose premium 8-speaker stereo system, which doesn't come from the factory. And by the way, how you got all 8 speakers in a Mazda Miata is a mystery to me. Or everybody
good
had
sound.
chrome wheels, aftermarket, but they didn't exist. They were just complete BS. But to your point about banks or finance sources being in on the scam, there's evidence for that. They know it's BS, but because they know it's BS, they have their own game, which is now I can make it into recourse paper. Everybody knows it.
Why would NADA ever allow somebody that was prosecuted for these crimes stand on the big stage? I have no idea.
You know, we can say back and forth, does the bank know? Does the dealership know? You know who doesn't know? The consumer doesn't know. And that's why we end up having to have things like the FTC come in and go, you guys can't behave like that.
Well, actually, the consumers do know. It's amazing because they school the consumer. They school the consumer. Look, if the bank calls you, you tell them you make this much money.
Well, and
the consumer gets in on it.
Yeah, but I'm talking in terms of even power booking. So there are times when a consumer is coached to answer a question from the bank on that first call. But let's keep in mind how many of those same finance managers sat the consumer down and said, here's why. This is how LTV works. This is what's going to happen when you go to trade it in. This is what's going to happen on your credit. Oh, and here's this and this. We give people just enough information. And by we, I don't mean me or any of you. We give people just enough information to be dangerous with, to get something done with the lure of something that they want and or need. We don't give them enough information to know if they should actually even be making that decision at all. And unfortunately, that's why we have to have an FTC that comes in. That's why everybody's in trouble right now. They didn't just
another crime is yo-yo financing.
Mm-hmm.
Explain yo-yo financing to us, Jason.
Look, first thing I'm going to admit is when I was a finance manager, I'm going to admit I wasn't above water. Finance manager. I was, yes. I did things that I was not.
Confessions by Jason.
Well, look,
we like honesty and transparency here.
Well, look,
things that happened prior to the expiration of the statute of limitations
yes,
on a ship outside the territorial waters of the United States.
Thank you to our attorney.
I feel much better about telling my story now. Thank you, Jim. But no, I started a dealership where the culture was about making money, and it had nothing to do with the client. It had to do with profit at all expense.
Payment packing was the standard in the industry.
It was trained to me. It was literally that was how I got taught how to finance vehicles. It wasn't until years later that I actually didn't know that was standard practice. It wasn't.
Didn't know it was a crime.
I did not even know. Look, I was young. All right. I was in my early 20s, making 6 figures a year, doing what they told me.
I was taught payment packing at a GMAC school.
Is that one of those old videos I found of yours?
That's the name of the
Jason, continue this story. This is important for people who are listening.
I think it all starts at the culture of the dealership, and I think unfortunately there is a fair amount of people that are in this industry and then don't know exactly what is the ramifications of some of their actions right now. Like I didn't know for 3 years until I left that dealership that what I was doing was not legal and that it was not standard practice across the board. And, I was, I think, fortunate enough to get out of that dealership. I think about 2 years after I got out of that dealership, they did go to litigation and the dealership actually got shut down. And I think the dealer principal even served some time for the stuff that he did. But, look, I think for the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I know we're talking about this in this very broad sense. Mm-hmm. And, I have empathy for the young individuals out there that don't know that are being
Yeah.
taught these bad practices. And here we are, we're trying to have a conversation about how to end these practices. And I think Max and Bobbie, I think you guys both said this, and Jim, I think you even said it. Look, if it starts from the top, you know, and we can talk about all the different tactics and all the different tricks, and the front loading, the back loading, the yo-yoing. Like, I mean, I will say our industry loves to find very creative ways to explain the actions of ourselves. I think we could write an entire book just on that. But what I think we need to discuss is how, from a cultural perspective, do we identify this? So for the individuals out there watching and listening right now, don't get stuck in a place like I did when I was young. So I'd love to kind of ask this for the rest of the group is how do you identify, the young people getting into this industry? How do I know I'm getting into a business that
I've researched 100 cases of deceptive trade practices in the last 3 years. My God. I mean, I didn't realize how epidemic it is. I had no idea.
Yeah, but why do we go in circles, right? You have to demand licensing, right? Because look at the comment that Peter Smith posted: extreme ownership, everything begins at the top. I agree. Everything does begin at the top, but licensing would, at the very minimum, put some kind of a barrier between the top, and the sales.
Hey, Max, if you kick a criminal out of a dealership, they go out and start consulting. Come on. I mean, next thing you know.
Sometimes.
That's very true. That's very true. But that is an indication of another problem. It's an indication of
these people are not acceptable. These people are not acceptable.
Right, but dealer principles are the biggest laydowns.
Are we not vetting dealer principles good enough? Is that process?
you can sell a dealer principle Brooklyn Bridge, right? So when these criminals come in to sell sales training, F&I, whatever training, right? Dealer principles will always say.
I mean, I love how
That's
easy you think it is to go in and charge like 10 grand a day. It's not, but you're not wrong, Max, in that it does occur. But here's the deal. Again, ignorance is not an acceptable excuse for bad decisions, right? Jason asked a great question a minute ago. I don't want to segue back, but I don't want to miss that opportunity for the people who are listening, which is how, if you're coming into it, do you know? You watch things like this, you read as much as you can, you self-learn, and you join the compliance options that you have within your state. I know that is not easy. I can't even give you the starting path for exactly where I suggest you go. Jim might be able to. I'm sure everybody can give an idea of. But you don't believe everything you read either. You don't join an F&I 20 group or an F&I group on Facebook and then just take everything as law. You learn and you collaborate and then you research. And that's how everybody here got to where they are. Nobody said, here's all the knowledge you need. Good luck. You have to self-learn in any industry. And I will tell you, like Jason said, this is your career. So even if you're a $700,000 a year employee who ends up getting sued and doesn't go to jail, you won't be a $700,000 employee anymore within the industry. And if you are, your dealership will be known for those things. Do not make permanent decisions for temporary situations. It is stupid.
Well, Bobbie, let's get back to specifics a second. Yo-yo financing is a defined crime. Yo-yo financing is when you finance somebody in a car and put them out on the street knowing they're going to get declined by the bank and they're going to have to come back. That is a defined crime, and you can be prosecuted, even jailed for that. Is that true, Jim Ganther?
Well, I've in a vacuum, yes, but I've never heard of anybody being imprisoned for that as a solo first-time offense.
That's a repeat offense, right?
Well, generally, the AMG management case of a year ago, the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, they never have unanimous decisions, but they did on this one. And they said that AMG management could not be fined $1.2 billion with a B dollars because they were not violating a consent decree. Everybody in our industry says every violation of Section 5 of the FTC Act is originally a $12,000 or $14,000, now up to $56,000 fine. But that's not what the law said. all you can get in the first case is injunctive relief, a consent order. And when you violate the consent order, then you trigger the big penalties. And that had been misunderstood and misapplied for decades until the Supreme Court righted the ship. And now the FTC has got its motor vehicle dealers trade regulation rule waiting in the wings to try to reverse the Supreme Court. Getting back to your point, yeah, what you're talking about is illegal, but the heavy fines aren't going to happen until you've gone through the process, had your wrist slapped, and then you decide to ignore the consent order, and then the anvil can drop on your head.
Well, Jim, what I found was several cases where yo-yo financing was included in the other charges and amplified the other charges. Does that make sense?
No, yes, you have contributing factors that will amplify penalties.
Yes.
And if you can prove patterns. And the problem is car dealers, being human, are creatures of habit. So in my experience, it's very rare to find this one screw up. Generally, we've discovered a pattern of the same screw up repeated over and over and over again. And that will get you in trouble. You want to be able to prove that this error was a one-off. And it does happen, but it happens. I don't want to name any dealership names, even the good ones.
We're not going to do that. No,
Dealers
we're not
out
going to
there
mention
who
the
will
dealer.
hire you the minute they find out somebody has done payment packing. You're fired. There is no second chance. There is no PIP involved. If you get busted for payment packing and they do internal audits regularly, you only have to get caught once and you're gone. Those are the dealerships that if that one problem went to the attorney general, they would get off probably without any penalty at all because they can prove they're consistently doing it the right way. The dealer I have in mind, when that happens, when they find out something bad happened, they write a report and they send it to the local office of the attorney general so that if there is a complaint, they've had the file for a week. And these guys are squeaky clean and are killing it because they have a reputation for honesty in the market. And long term, I think that's your best business practice.
James Ganther, on the screen, Brad Curtis on the sidebar. I interpret that for me.
Hello, Brad.
Interpret that for me, Jim.
We advisors to F&I professionals would never use such a pejorative term. You probably use the term lawyer, and he's right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I mean, look,
What do I call you, barrister?
You can call me the beta dog.
Beta dog.
I
Okay,
just
so
did
yo-yo
and ask
financing
what
is
yo-yo
against the law.
financing is.
Even though yo-yo financing is against the law, and failing to sell the window etch. Window etch is a product that is probably drawing a lot of ire right now because people are telling customers it's pre-mounted when it's not pre-mounted, and it's an insurance policy anyway. Window etch has lured more people to prosecution than any other F&I and any other F&I process or litigation. I say not prosecution.
really? That's brought in more? I thought it would have been nitrous, but
I was the nitrogen.
Oh, the nitrous.
I thought nitrogen. Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought nitrogen would have been the number one culprit. But okay.
Jason, if I can throw in a personal piece of experience, early in my career, I did government contract law, and I represented a company that made nitrogen machines for aircraft carriers. They sucked out the ambient air, separated out oxygen and nitrogen. The United States Navy will not deploy an aircraft carrier unless it has two nitrogen machines operating, one as a backup, because they put nitrogen in all of their jet tires and they don't fly without it. Nitrogen is a high quality product with real value. You get in trouble when you sell nitrogen and inject the ambient atmosphere. That's the problem. Nitrogen itself is valuable.
I live in Michigan. We do nitrogen in our tires here, and it's legit.
Max,
Jim, you should immediately
You should immediately contact Nightingale. You should let the paid spokesperson.
Somebody get that mailbox money going right now.
Absolutely.
Gotta love that.
Yeah.
Jim, can
Okay,
I mention
okay.
real quick something?
Everybody knows that supplying a fake invoice or supplying a fake job verification or a fake paycheck. Now, how about fake recalls? When the Bill Hurd organization was prosecuted by the state attorney general of the state of Georgia, allegedly they were sending customers recalls that didn't exist to get the service work.
Okay, who exactly was going to pay for the service work, Jim?
Well, it was customer pay upgrade. They were trying to upsell the customer after they did the non-existent warranty
Creative.
work, the
They're
non-existent recall.
No,
I'm not going to touch that one.
No, and Bill Hurd's not there anymore.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
But you know, even Bill Hurd, who was accused of many things by many state attorney generals, allegedly, but truthfully, he is not out of business because somebody prosecuted him. He's out of business because of floor plan during the 2008 financial crash. I mean, the state attorney generals never got Bill Hurd. They were after him, but they never got him.
They had a 7-digit settlement not long after I moved to Florida for false imprisonment. Here in Florida, when literally salesmen threw customers' keys on the roof. You've now restricted the customer's ability to leave, and they were arrested. Whoever was responsible literally went out in cuffs the next day. It was all over the local news, and I was teaching a class about a year later, and one of the people there said, I was a salesperson that day. And he said, what happened was, for the month following that newspaper expose, or excuse me, the TV expose, we had 0 customers. I and 30 other salespeople had to find other jobs because nobody would come to this known to be toxic dealership. So they really, they lost $1 million plus to make the case go away. And they lost a month's revenue out front. That's pretty significant, and probably more than the AG would have gotten. And that's not their only story.
Well, there's a lot of stories. The tax bump's illegal.
The tax, I don't even know what that one is.
I'm actually not familiar with tax bump either.
There was a dealership in Memphis, Tennessee, in the 70s that was renowned for the tax bump. When the customer bought a car, they would put the customer in a room with ugly ass black paneling on the wall, and there was a desk in this room. They would sit the customer at a desk, and on the wall was a picture of the President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and on the other wall was a picture of the governor of the state of Tennessee, and there was a state seal of the United States right on the desk. And there was an American flag and the state flag on either side. And the people would sit there, and so help me, a guy would come out that looked like Andy Griffith in Matlock wearing a seersucker suit. How you folks? I'm authorized and required to collect taxes for the state of Tennessee. I see you bought a car from these people. and now the taxes were already figured into the deal. This is a double taxation. And a lot of people are doing the tax bump right now in the F&I office and in the sales department. How do you intend to handle your taxes? They've already figured the taxes in the deal, and then they're bumping for the taxes or quoting a customer a figure without taxes, including a lease. You cannot quote a lease to a customer who is physically where they live and what their taxation is. You can advertise plus taxes because you don't know where the people live and you don't know what their taxes are. But when you physically got a customer, you must quote the lease with taxes included.
It's the good old money down versus money due, right?
Yeah, but the tax bump, there's a lot of dealerships out there right now, Jim, doing the tax bump.
That's a new one.
Oh man,
It's
I don't think they got Andy Griffith, but they got the whole.
thinking hell must be full.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember the EV rebates and all that going on. I remember the
Jason, we just had to bring
cash
up
for
EV
clunkers. Remember the cash for clunkers?
Oh my God. I was a finance director during Cash for Clunkers for a giant organization, for a giant publicly traded group. And it was a pain in the butt. Like
I probably
out
used
of
the
control.
same ownership for probably about 172
Right.
individuals.
It was, I remember having a fax machine, a scanner, and like 17 setups in the office for that whole system. It was crazy. I want to mention just real quick, because the comment has come through a couple of times in my private messaging. A lot of people said, what is yo-yo financing? And although we gave an explanation, let me real quick.
Yo-yo financing is fine. Go ahead and explain it, Jason.
Yeah,
So, like,
let me actually
sorry,
tell them something real quick. Also known as spot deliveries. We make it that simple.
There you go.
In states
That's
that
actually what it is.
No,
legally it varies.
it's not.
Yes, it
No,
varies
it's
in
not.
different
No,
states.
it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
That is what we call it now. Okay.
No, yo-yo financing is not spot delivery. It's spot delivery when you know for a fact this customer will
Right.
not qualify for the rate.
Right.
Spot delivery is not. I spot delivered a whole lot of people. I knew they were good. I knew they would stay in the car because I studied my craft. But no,
So
no.
keeping
Spot
in
delivery
keeping
is
in mind,
not.
keeping in mind that I didn't finish that sentence to be able to say spot deliveries are legal in some states and not legal in others. And part of the FTC issue that comes in, and you'll see this in states that where spot deliveries aren't legal, is the term yo-yo financing is used in it. I'm not saying that that's the exact term for it, but that is used, and that's why the question came through on the DMs.
Yo-yo financing is putting a customer in a car knowing they're not going to get approved, and knowing they're going to come back and then.
But the issue with that, Jim, is you have to prove that they knew that. So
right.
Once again, like Jim Ganther just said, a pattern develops where you've done this multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some states totally legal in, but some they aren't.
Generally, all you need, remember, the magic term is pattern or practice. Practice is you did it once. Pattern is you did it more than once. They got you kind of either way, but it's the pattern that's going to really kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the dealership I was working at, we had what we called a senior finance manager. The senior finance manager would tell us to spot deliver it, but he was the only one knew that he was going to have to make a call 2 weeks later to bring that vehicle back, and at a higher rate. And a lot of times already had the paperwork ready to go before they even left, knowing that they were going to come back in a week or 2 weeks to sign on a higher interest rate. So there was a controllable process, all right, in place that allowed stuff like that to happen, but it was under the disguise of a spot delivery.
Like I said, the number one deceptive trade practice in a dealership today is still power booking, and that in most cases is a federal crime. You know, because you're dealing with a federally insured bank.
There's that many people out there that have fake templates for pay stubs and stuff. I didn't even.
I'm telling you, people have fake templates. Some of the criminals that I've seen the court cases, and some of these criminals had every computer in the dealership had a template to falsify payment stubs, and I know of dealerships that had college degrees. I know
it's going to be interesting
that printed fake college degrees for the college program.
It's going to be interesting to see who uses deep fake AI technology to get way out of control with this, especially when video is involved in finance and sales offices. Because everybody's creative. Everybody's got a workaround. It's going to take one. Oh, nope. Got a video of that guy signing it.
Well, like I say, most of the criminal stuff happens in the sales department, not in the finance department. They're zeroing in because the finance manager takes the heat.
Yeah, it happens in both departments. It's definitely not all finance. I think Max took us there to protect.
How about the BDC? Does the BDC do anything illegal in some of these dealerships?
All the time. Like saying,
down.
Right. Like saying a car is there when it's not, or being asked to verify a price. And I'll tell you where it is different with BDC, not that the human nature of it is different, is that I've not yet to meet a BDC person who's actually empowered to to give a different answer, or that has the type of training and anything compliance wise to know that they are not allowed to do that. But I suspect that it will be one of the first things that we see huge litigation on for dealerships, is how often that occurs, where a car isn't there and they're not intentionally doing a bait and switch. They're just not communicating with the sales department. And it happens all the time. Or the answers that are given on a phone call. I heard a dealer who shall not be named teach their BDC, which we corrected, that it is less expensive to buy the car at the dealership if you finance it there because you get a discount. That's going to be fun.
You can't say a discount. You can't say you lower the interest rate if you buy product.
Don't say free. Yeah. I've got to run to another obligation. It's been fun, gang.
Thank
love
you.
you, James Ganther, Mosaic,
thank
out
you.
of Tampa.
See you in the morning.
The foremost compliance attorneys.
Hey, James, you're going to want to shut that camera off.
You want to do compliance? Hire that guy.
So guys, I want to make a comment about the yo-yo financing in defense of finance managers, because a lot of times a finance director makes a decision to release the car, right? Thinking that he's going to get it done the next day. And that means that maybe that finance director doesn't know how to read the bank program. He doesn't understand the leverage that he has, because he might be thinking that maybe my dealership floor plans with this particular lender and I can twist their arm and get an exception. There's absolutely zero criminal intent here, right? It just happens that it doesn't work out. And they have to bring the customer back and say, hey, Mr. Customer, Miss Customer, right? Either you give the car back or you have to take it at this interest rate. Not because the dealer or the finance manager is malicious, but because things just happen that way. Because there is an element of art to F&I. It's not just science.
You have to learn to read a bureau and know your bank programs. And to be super clear, I am all for a spot delivery for the right reasons and in most states, but in some states, it's illegal. So for the people listening who go, well, is it okay in my state? I'm just saying that those terms can be used in reverse or in conjunction with this situation. It does not mean that doing a spot delivery is a bad choice or it's illegal. You're typically trying to help the consumer. And this is typically a pretty normal practice, but it was proposed in 2022 that the term be used by FTC be used to describe that. It's different in different states and the rules vary.
Right. Another point I want to make is about window etching, right? We can make many arguments that it's this or that. At the end of the day, window etching policy is awesome, right? Because if your vehicle is stolen, it pays above and beyond what your insurance policy is going to pay. Where dealers get in trouble is by charging too much money for it. But let's assume for a second, you want to be doing the right thing as a dealer, and you want to stand out from competition, and you want to have a compelling why buy from us story. Why wouldn't you just preload window etching at no charge?
Well, that would be a different situation, certainly.
Yeah.
But to charge a customer, and there's a whole lot of arguments. But if you got employees like paying off bankers, I mean, why would somebody hire a criminal like that? I mean, some of the things I hear about just blow my mind.
I think part of that comes in because part of the law when you're calling to find out if somebody's references is would you hire them back again or not? You have to be so careful of what you say that unless it's public knowledge, they might not even know. It's like bad dates. There should be a database for it. You could just go in and be like,
getting down to the last 2 minutes, anything you haven't said you need to say, Jason?
No, I think we did a good job of kind of covering it. I think for anybody out there watching and listening right now who's in the industry and you feel like maybe the dealership that you currently are working at may be participating in some of the deceptive practices that we discussed today, don't be afraid to reach out and ask. I'd be glad to take any questions or DMs. It's hard because there's not always a clearly defined line. There is some gray space. So, but you know what? If you think it and you feel it, you need to talk about it.
Yeah, well, some of the most prominent dealers in the world get duped into hiring some of these criminals. It just blows my mind.
You know who you are.
Okay, Max, anything you haven't said? We got 1 minute.
Listen, I'm good. All I want to say is that dealers that hire these guys, they're good guys. You know, they're just complete laydowns because they sell all day, and when somebody else comes in to sell them, they lay down and they buy it hook. You know, the whole thing. You know, it doesn't matter what the past is or the future. Or the
Okay,
present.
Bobbie, we're over time. What you got?
I would just tell you guys that there's some really good comments here, a lot that we weren't able to get to and a lot that didn't show on our screen yet. And I think that this is a conversation that needs to be continued. So I would really like to see it continued in the comments and for good education to be put out there for you and for everybody
Wave
watching.
goodbye, everybody.